what we call one another is really important, isn't it? I wonder if you've got a nickname that people use for you. I wonder what that is. And I wonder if you've ever had the odd experience of somebody who normally calls you by a nickname suddenly using your full name, and what that sort of formality does for your friendship, what it does for your relationship. Psalm 22, this psalm that we're taking a pilgrimage through this Lent as we prepare ourselves for Easter, begins with words that Jesus will later quote from the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? And that stands, doesn't it, in stark contrast to the way that we're used to hearing Jesus pray. The Jesus who throughout his whole life had called God Father, but that Aramaic word Abba, it's so easy to say an Abba, one of the first words a little baby could form, just almost a B sound, an intimate, close relationship. Now on the cross doesn't address God here as Father, but first simply as my God. It speaks to us, I think, deeply, doesn't it, of what happens to us in struggle and in uncertainty and in suffering. I wonder what songs you quote when you pray. I wonder what psalms and scriptures you quote. I wonder what you call God. And I wonder this Lent, right now in your life, how close you are to God. Is your relationship with God growing in intimacy, Abba? Or is it growing in distance? Is it growing in understanding? Or is it growing in frustration? Is it growing in faith? Or is it growing in doubt and silence? Today we're going to see what this song, the song of the cross and the crown, has to say to us. There's something really interesting about the Hebrew that is used here, the picture that is painted of a child that is leaning, resting, relying, trusting on its mother, on its mother's shoulder. The Hebrew tenses here, there's a tension between a perfect past tense, this is the relationship I knew, and a kind of imperfect present tense, an ongoing tense. So it's not just you are the God who brought me out, it's you are the one who brings me out. It's not just the one who taught me to trust, or the one I trusted, but it is the one who makes me trust, who gives me reason to rest the full weight of my life and my faith on you. And even within the tenses and the verbs that are being used here in the original language, that tension is being teased out between the God that the psalmist knows him to be and the God that he needs him to be in this season and the God that he finds him to be. There's a real tension between his feelings, the facts of his situation and his faith, and that is where this song, this cry, this lament is coming from, isn't it? If you always thought of God as being distant and uninterested and uninvolved and uncaring, you wouldn't be crying out like this. But it's that sense of, this is not how I was raised, this is not the God I've known, this is not how I expected you to be. And so this psalm poses for us a question, doesn't it? In the raw honesty of this prayer, what will I do? What will you do? What will we do when God doesn't do all that we expect him to? When God doesn't do in this season what he's done for us in a previous season, what will that do for our relationship? And what will that do for our faith? Interestingly, Psalm 22 is not the only psalm that Jesus quotes. on the cross. Later, this word Abba, Father, comes back again. And Jesus says, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit, or the Hebrew concept there of breath and spirit are interwoven. I give you my final breath there on the cross, and cries out, it is finished, and breathes his last. Notice there that the word Father returns, but he's quoting from Psalm 31 verse 5, and I was kind of interested to know why. And the more I dug into it, the more I discovered that Jewish children, when they're growing up, are taught to use Psalm 31 as a bedtime prayer, as a nighttime prayer. Some of the last words that they would pray, often in the presence of their mother or their father or both, was, Lord, into your hands I commit my spirit. And there, in this moment of brutality, of torture, of suffering, of punishment, of shame, of death, Jesus chooses these words of surrender and of trust. He commits the final day of his earthly life and the final night of his soul into the hands of his Father. This psalm really does take us full circle and leads us deep into what it means to know God as our Father. Into your hands. For some of us today, when we think of the hands of our Father, that might be a difficult image, either because of just experiencing a distant or an absent father, or for some of us, a controlling or an abusive father. The enemy has really gone after the image of fatherhood, hasn't he, in our day and age, to mess up, to skew people's view and vision of God, I believe. But Jesus here places his hands into God, his Father's trust, his protection, his provision, his guarding, his guiding. I'm very blessed. I've always been very blessed to have grown up in a Christian home. Some of you will know my dad was in ministry. Some of you will know my dad from the past or from times when he's been up to Cardiff or in Bethel. I've been very blessed to have a wonderful dad and a godly dad. I remember one time when we'd moved from one place to another, and it had been a kind of a short gap between moves, and I was just struggling to fit in, struggling to settle. And I remember one day just going and lying on the bed and just crying and not really knowing why, just frustration, hurt and longing, just all coming out in tears. And then I suddenly became aware that my dad had come into the room and had seen this. And of course, as an adult now, I can kind of imagine more of what it's like and what it might have been like to see me crying like that because of his job and because of a move that his ministry had brought about. And Dad didn't say anything. He didn't try and fix it or solve it or tell me to get over it or anything like that. He simply came and lay next to me on the bed, kind of matched the position I was lying in, put his arm around me, and he just held me for the longest possible time. And in that moment of isolation, loneliness and sadness, I knew what it was to rest in my Father's hands. And I know that for each and every one of us, that is God's desire. That is God's will. That even though at times the situations we find ourselves in and our struggling and our suffering can make it feel like we're just an infant that has been left, we feel vulnerable and isolated, that might be our emotional experience, and that experience might be very real, but it is not our actual experience. In Jesus we are held in the hands of the Father. And my prayer for each of us today, wherever you are, whatever you're going through, and for all of us as we journey together through Lent and through the uncertainty of the times that are unfolding around us, is that in those moments of vulnerability, of isolation, of fear, of doubt, of distance, of pain and of struggle. We might find in the raw honesty of our relationship with God, He is not just my God, He is my Abba, He is my Father. And whatever else is going on all round about me, His hands are the safest place to be. This is the song of the cross and the crown.